The mating ceremony was the most sacred night in Valdrin. Every unmated woman of age was required to attend, required by royal decree, required by ancient law. But Adaryn sat locked in her chamber, listening to the distant music through stone walls, forbidden to go. She was a hollow, born without a wolf spirit, an empty vessel where power should have lived. Among shifters there was no greater shame. The mark on her inner wrist proved it, a branded circle with nothing inside. Hollow, cursed, contagious, some whispered, as if her emptiness could spread. Her stepmother had made certain Adaryn would not embarrass the family tonight. The door was bolted from outside, the window barred, while her stepsister Mira preened in silks and jewels. Hoping to catch the Alpha King's eye, Adaryn would remain hidden like a shameful secret. She had accepted this. She had stopped hoping years ago. Then the music stopped. Not faded, not paused. Stopped, mid-note, as if cut by a blade. The bolt on her door scraped open. A royal guard stood in the doorway. "You will come with us. Now." "There must be a mistake," Adaryn whispered. "There is no mistake." The guard's eyes dropped to the brand on her wrist, then back to her face. "The Alpha King has stopped the ceremony. He noticed your seat was empty. He is asking for you by name." The king who could have any woman in the kingdom had halted the most sacred ritual in Valdrin's history. For her? For a hollow? Neither of them understood what that single choice would awaken. The great hall of Valdrin had been transformed for the ceremony. Thousands of candles burned in iron chandeliers, casting golden light across marble floors. Garlands of moonflowers draped every pillar, their pale petals filling the air with intoxicating sweetness. Every unmated woman of noble blood stood arranged in concentric circles around the center dais. They wore their finest gowns, their most precious jewels. Months of preparation had led to this single night, and at the center of it all, elevated on a platform of black marble, sat the empty throne. Mira Voss stood in the innermost circle, exactly where her mother Ravenna had positioned her. Her gown was crimson silk, cut daringly low, her dark hair cascading in perfect waves. She had been groomed for this moment since childhood. Now, locked 3 floors above in her cramped chamber, Adaryn sat on the edge of her narrow bed and listened to the muffled celebration below. She looked down at the brand on her inner wrist. The hollow circle. Empty. Worthless. Her mother, her real mother, had died giving birth to her. Her father had remarried within a year, choosing Ravenna, a widow with a daughter of her own. Then Adaryn had turned 13. The age when a wolf spirit awakened in every shifter child. Nothing had awakened in her. The healers had examined her for weeks. Shamans had performed ritual after ritual. Nothing. She was hollow. Empty. Her father had looked at her differently after that. Like she was already dead. The music stopped. Adaryn's head snapped up. She pressed her palms against the cold door, straining to hear. Shouting. Her stepmother's voice cutting through the chaos. "She's no one, a defective creature. Your Majesty, please. My daughter Mira is right here." A male voice responded. Deep, cold, terrifyingly calm. "I did not ask what you think I want. I asked who belongs in that empty seat." Footsteps thundered up the stairs. Adaryn backed away as the bolt scraped open. 2 guards filled the doorway. "You are to come with us," the first one said. "Immediately." "I'm not permitted at the ceremony," Adaryn whispered. "I'm hollow. It's forbidden. The king's command supersedes all other laws." They flanked her and marched her through corridors she'd only glimpsed from doorways, past servants who gasped as she passed. The great hall doors loomed before her. The guards pushed them open. Every eye turned to her. Hundreds of women in beautiful gowns, their faces twisted with confusion and outrage. Her stepmother Ravenna stood near the dais, face pale as death. Mira stood beside her, crimson gown suddenly looking like spilled blood. And at the center of it all, standing on the black marble dais, was the Alpha King of Valdren, Theron. She had never seen him before. Rumors painted him as a monster, a ghost, a curse given flesh. The rumors had been kind. He was tall, impossibly tall, with shoulders broad enough to block out the light. His hair was black, the harsh black of a void that consumed light rather than reflected it. His features were sharp, angular, carved by someone who had forgotten what softness looked like. But his eyes were the pale gold of a wolf on the hunt, and they were fixed directly on her. Theron descended the dais steps slowly. The crowd parted before him like water before a blade. He stopped 3 feet from Aderin, close enough that she could feel the cold radiating from his body. Cold, not warmth. Alphas ran hot. Everyone knew that. His amber gaze swept over her, taking in the threadbare dress, the unadorned hair, the trembling hands. His gaze paused on her wrist, on the hollow brand, and something flickered in his expression. Not disgust. Something she couldn't name. "Your seat was empty," he said. His voice was quiet, but it carried through the entire hall. "Why?" Aderin's throat went dry. "I was not permitted to attend, Your Majesty." "By whose authority?" "Her family's," Ravenna cut in, stepping forward. "Your Majesty, you must understand. She's defective. A hollow. It would be an insult to allow such a creature." "I wasn't speaking to you." The words were soft, almost gentle, but Ravenna stumbled backward as if struck. Theron's wolf-bright stare never left Aderin's face. "Who commanded you to stay hidden?" "My stepmother," she whispered. "She locked me in my chamber. She said I would bring shame upon the family." He turned his head slightly toward Ravenna. "You locked away a woman required by law to attend this ceremony. You hid her from your king." "I was protecting the sanctity of the ritual. You made a decision that was not yours to make." He turned back to Aderin. For a long moment, he simply looked at her, that gaze pressing against her skin, searching for something she couldn't fathom. Then he spoke, and the world tilted beneath her feet. "This one. I choose this one." Chaos erupted, but Aderin stood frozen, unable to comprehend that the most powerful man in the kingdom had chosen her. The carriage moved through the night in silence. Aderin sat rigid on the velvet seat, watching the palace grow larger through the window. Moonlight turned its white stone towers to silver. She could still hear the screaming, her stepmother's shriek as the guards escorted her from the hall, Mira's sobs, the whispers of hundreds of women who had spent their lives preparing for this moment. He had chosen the hollow. None of it made sense. The carriage stopped. A footman opened the door and Aderin stepped onto smooth stone. The palace loomed above her, impossibly grand. She followed a servant through corridors of polished marble, past guards who stood motionless as statues. Finally, they stopped before a door of dark wood carved with wolves. "His Majesty will see you now." The room beyond was a study lined with books. A fire crackled in the hearth despite the warm night, and standing before that fire, his back to her, was the Alpha King. He didn't turn as she entered. "Your Majesty," Aderin said, sinking into a curtsy. "I don't understand why you've chosen me. There must be some mistake." "There is no mistake." He turned, and Aderin's breath caught. In the intimate glow of the fire, she could see details distance had hidden. The shadows under his eyes, dark as bruises. The tension in his jaw, as if clenching against constant pain. The way his fingers curled and uncurled at his sides, fighting something. And his eyes. Up close they flickered, gold to black to gold again, like a flame being smothered and reignited. "I chose you," he said, "because you have nothing." The words landed with the flat finality of truth. I'm hollow, Adaryn said. I have no wolf. I cannot shift. I am useless as a mate. Yes. He crossed to a table where 2 glasses waited. He poured dark wine, but when he lifted his glass, Adaryn noticed something that made her stomach clench. His hand was shaking. Alphas didn't tremble. Alphas were strength incarnate. I don't need a mate who can bear heirs, Theron said quietly. I need someone with nothing to lose. Someone who won't be destroyed when she discovers what I am. What are you? He raised his hand toward the light. His fingers were pale, too pale. And at the tips, something dark was spreading. A blackness that seemed to pulse, like ink bleeding through paper. I am dying, Theron said simply. Or rather, I am becoming something that should not exist. Every king of my line has faced this curse. My father held it at bay for 30 years before it consumed him. Some say the curse was placed by shadow priests centuries ago, though no one knows for certain anymore. How much time do you have? Months. Perhaps less. And marrying me will stop this? No. Nothing will stop it. He set down his glass. But a mate can slow the progression. Give me more time. I have matters to settle before I am no longer myself. She should have been terrified. Instead, she felt something unexpected. Relief. He wasn't choosing her because she was special. He was choosing her because she was expendable. Because losing her would cost him nothing. It was cold. It was cruel. It was honest. And honesty was so rare that it felt almost like kindness. I accept, she said. Theron's sun-colored irises searched her face. You don't want to consider your options? My options are to return to a stepmother who locks me in chambers, or to marry a king who will likely be dead within the year. Adaryn lifted her chin. This isn't a difficult choice. Something shifted in his expression. Not quite a smile, but close. He moved toward the door. The wedding will be in 3 days. Your Majesty, you said you needed someone who wouldn't be destroyed when they discovered what you are. What happens to the mates who came before me? The silence stretched. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. There were no mates before you. The curse has a price. Any woman I take as mate will be bound to my fate. If I fall to the darkness, she falls with me. The chill in the room intensified. In 7 years, no one has been willing to bind themselves to a dying monster. He opened the door. Until tonight. Until you. He left without another word. Adaryn stood alone, the fire dying to embers. She looked down at her wrist, at the brand that marked her as worthless. Perhaps that was why she wasn't afraid. When you had already lost everything, what was left to fear? The morning of the contract signing dawned gray and cold. Adaryn had barely slept. The chambers they'd given her were larger than her stepmother's entire house, a canopied bed draped in silver silk, windows overlooking gardens that seemed to stretch forever. Servants had arrived at dawn. They'd bathed her, dressed her in a gown of deep blue velvet, and arranged her hair in elaborate coils. None of them mentioned the brand on her wrist, though she caught them glancing at it. Now she stood outside the council chamber. Her stepmother was inside. The contract required a family witness. The doors opened. The council chamber was cold marble and colder faces. A long table dominated the space, surrounded by advisors in formal robes. At the head sat Theron, dressed in black. And at the far end, looking like she'd swallowed something rotten, sat Ravenna Voss. Lady Adaryn, please, be seated. She sat, folding her hands to hide their trembling. Theron raised a hand, cutting off the advisor who began to speak. I'll explain the terms myself. He turned to Adaryn. You will be my wife, my queen. You will have access to the full resources of the crown. In exchange, you will stand beside me at official functions and fulfill ceremonial duties. And the other duties? Ravenna's voice cut through. Surely His Majesty expects an heir. How exactly does he intend to produce one with a woman who has no wolf? Theron's amber gaze fixed on Ravenna with an expression that made her shrink back. The matter of heirs is none of your concern. She's my stepdaughter. She was your stepdaughter. His voice dropped another degree. As of this moment, she is my betrothed, my queen. You have no claim on her, you have no authority over her, and you will not speak to her without my explicit permission. Ravenna's face went white. I understand perfectly what you've done, Theron continued. You locked away a woman legally required to attend the mating ceremony. You've spent years hiding her, shaming her, treating her as something less than human. He moved around the table, footsteps silent on marble. Ravenna tried to rise but couldn't. She remained frozen as frost crept across the table's surface, spreading outward from where his hands had rested. Sign the contract, Theron said. Then leave my palace. You are no longer welcome here. Ravenna's hand shook as she signed. The moment she finished, she fled. The frost began to recede. Aderin stared at the table, watching ice evaporate into mist. You're cold. Alphas don't produce frost. His jaw tightened. The curse. The cold will worsen as it progresses. Eventually, everything I touch will freeze. His voice was flat. Including you, potentially. Which is why the contract includes an escape clause. Article 7. If the curse accelerates beyond a certain point, the marriage can be dissolved. Aderin pulled the document toward her, scanning until she found the clause. It was there, a way out. Why give me an escape? She asked softly. You could trap me? Pain flickered in his expression. Because I know what it is to be trapped. I wouldn't wish that on anyone. Especially not you. Especially not you. The words echoed as she signed the contract. As the council filed out, Aderin lingered. Why did you choose me? Truly? Theron was quiet for a long moment. When I walked into that ceremony, I felt it immediately. Something was wrong. Something was missing. Then I saw your seat. Empty. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that whoever was meant to sit there was the one I needed to find. How did you know? His wolf-bright stare searched her face. I don't know. That's what terrifies me. He swept past her, leaving Aderin alone with her unanswered questions. She passed Mira in the corridor. Her stepsister's face was blotchy with tears, but her eyes were cold. Enjoy your victory while it lasts, Mira whispered. When he discovers what you really are, what my mother never told you, he'll throw you away just like everyone else has. Aderin stopped. What are you talking about? But Mira was already walking away. What my mother never told you, what truth was still hidden. The wedding took place at dusk. Aderin had expected something grand, a cathedral filled with thousands. Instead, Theron had arranged something intimate. A chapel within the palace walls, lit by candles rather than chandeliers, with only a handful of witnesses. Fewer people to stare, he'd said. Fewer whispers for you to endure. The thoughtfulness caught her off guard. She walked down the aisle alone, wearing a gown of silver silk. No family to escort her. Just flickering flames and the king waiting at the altar. He wore black, as always. But there was tension in his shoulders, a tightness around his eyes, as if the ceremony itself was costing him something. The officiant spoke the ancient words. Aderin repeated them. Theron's responses were quiet, measured. Then came the binding. Join hands. Aderin extended her hand. Theron hesitated before taking it. His skin was ice, not cool. Ice. The kind of cold that burned, that sank through flesh and settled into bone. Aderin gasped. Theron tried to pull away. I should have warned. No. She tightened her grip. I'm fine. His sun-colored eyes searched her face. You're shivering. I've been cold before. Finish the ceremony. Vulnerability flickered across his features. Something almost like gratitude. The officiant bound their hands with white silk. The traditional words were spoken. They were married. When the witnesses departed, they stood alone, hands still bound. You didn't flinch, Theron said quietly. Should I have? Everyone else does. Most people can't stand to touch me for more than a few seconds. He paused. You're the first person who's held on. That night, Aderin sat in the Queen's chambers waiting for her husband. The servants had prepared everything. A bath scented with lavender, a nightgown of thin white silk, candles burning low, a knock at the door, soft, almost hesitant. Come in. Theron entered slowly. He'd removed his formal jacket, leaving only a loose white shirt. Dark tendrils of shadow crept past his knuckles, clearly visible in the candlelight. He stopped several feet from the bed. I won't touch you tonight, he said quietly. Or any night, unless you wish it. Relief flooded through her. She'd braced for demands, expectations. Instead, he stood across the room like a man afraid to come closer. Thank you, she whispered. He turned toward the door. Wait. He paused. Stay, she said. You don't have to touch me, but don't leave me alone tonight. Silence stretched. Then, slowly, he crossed to a chair near the fireplace and sat down heavily. They talked through the night, not about the curse, about small things, books she'd read in secret, places he'd dreamed of visiting before the crown trapped him, the way moonlight looked on fresh snow. Somewhere before dawn, Aderin fell asleep to the sound of his voice. When she woke, he was gone. But on the pillow beside her lay a single winter rose, its petals edged with frost. He had stayed until she slept. He had left her something beautiful. The cold on the petals matched the cold lingering in her chest, but for the first time it didn't feel like a threat. It felt like a promise. 3 weeks into her marriage, Aderin realized she was waiting for him. Every evening, as the sun sank below the horizon, she found herself listening for footsteps, watching the door, counting minutes until it opened. He came every night now. Not for intimacy. They still hadn't touched beyond that single joined hands moment at the altar. But he came. He sat in the chair by the fire. They talked for hours. He told her about the curse, how it had started as whispers in his blood when he turned 18, how his father had suffered the same fate, transforming slowly into something monstrous before losing himself entirely. The darkness feeds on isolation, Theron explained. The more alone I am, the faster it spreads. That's why the mate bond matters. It's about having someone to anchor you to humanity. And I'm your anchor. You are. Every night I spend with you, the darkness retreats. Not much, but enough. She should have felt used. Instead, she felt something dangerous. Purpose. For the first time in her life, she mattered. That night, she sought out Seraphine, the elderly woman who managed the palace household. I need to know how to be closer to someone who keeps their distance. Seraphine studied her with knowing eyes. His Majesty has spent 7 years building walls. Show him you're not afraid of the cold. Don't just tolerate it. Embrace it. He's forgotten what it feels like to be wanted. That night, Aderin was sitting on the floor before the fireplace when Theron arrived. Cushions surrounded her. Wine waited on a low table. What's this? He asked. Something different. Sit with me. Not across the room. Here. He hesitated. The darkness pulsed beneath his skin. The cold. I don't care about the cold. Slowly, he lowered himself onto the cushions beside her. Close. Closer than they'd ever been. Their fingers brushed as she handed him wine. Ice shot through her hand. She didn't pull away. Theron's eyes widened. You felt that? Yes. And you're still here. Yes. Something cracked in his expression. Vulnerability. They talked. But tonight, Adaryn leaned closer when she spoke. Let her shoulder brush against his. Reached out to touch his arm when she laughed. Each touch was agony. Burning cold that made her teeth ache. But each touch made the dark veins under his skin retreat slightly. "Why are you doing this?" he asked, voice rough. "You told me the darkness feeds on isolation. How can I anchor you from across the room?" Theron stared at her. Then, slowly, he took her hand. The cold hit like a wave. Her vision blurred, but she held on as the ice crept up her wrist, held on as something in his expression shattered completely. "You're freezing," he whispered. "I don't care. You should tell me what you feel, right now, when you're holding my hand." Silence. Then, barely above a whisper, "Warm. For the first time in years, I feel warm." She smiled through the cold, through the pain. "Then don't let go." He didn't. They sat until dawn, hands intertwined. And for the first time since the curse had taken hold, he allowed himself to hope. Something had changed between them. Adaryn felt it in the way Theron looked at her now, not with distant politeness, but with something searching, something hungry. He came earlier each evening, sometimes before dinner, bringing food so they could eat together. The first time, she'd been so surprised she'd forgotten to speak. "I thought we might try something different," he'd said, echoing her words. And there had been something almost playful in his voice. They talked about everything now. His fears about the kingdom. Her dreams of life beyond the walls that had always trapped her. "We're both empty in different ways," she said one night. Theron turned to look at her. "You're not empty. You never were." "I have no wolf." The healers confirmed it. The healers were wrong. He reached out, his cold fingers brushing her cheek. "I've spent my life surrounded by people with powerful wolves. None of them have what you have." "What do I have?" "Courage, kindness, the ability to sit beside a monster every night and make him feel human." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "That's not nothing. That's everything." Her breath caught. The cold of his touch should have been painful. Instead, it felt like coming home. She was falling in love with him. They had started sharing the bed, not for intimacy, but for warmth. Her body heat seemed to ease his suffering. One night she woke to find him shivering beside her despite being buried under blankets. "It's getting worse," he whispered. "The darkness. Every day there's less of me left." She held him tighter. "Then take what you need from me." "I can't ask that." "You're not asking, I'm offering." She pressed her lips against his frozen forehead. "Whatever you need, I'm here." Weeks passed. The curse's hold on him wasn't spreading as fast. Even the advisors had noticed. "What are you doing to him?" Seraphine asked one afternoon. "He smiled yesterday, in public. 3 servants fainted from shock." Adaryn laughed, the sound surprising her. "He's not as cold as everyone thinks." "And you, my lady, how are you finding your new life?" "I think I might be happy. I didn't know I could be happy." That night, Theron arrived with a troubled expression. He paced instead of sitting. "The council is pressuring me about an heir. They need assurance the bloodline will continue." Adaryn rose and crossed to him. Slowly, she reached up and cupped his face. The cold was instant, biting. But she held on. "What do you want?" "Not what the council wants." "What do you want?" His mask crumbled. "You," he whispered. "I want you in ways I have no right to want. I want to touch you without fearing I'll freeze you. I want to love you, but I can't." "The curse." "What about the curse?" He pulled away. The shadows were pulsing now, dark veins spreading up his neck. "There's something I haven't told you. If I fall in love with you, truly fall in love, the curse will come for you too." The words hung like a blade. Every king of my line has watched someone they love die because of this curse. My father watched my mother wither away. That's why I chose you. Someone I thought I could never love. Someone who would be safe because I'd never care enough to doom them. And now? Now I care so much it terrifies me. Every moment I spend with you brings the curse closer to you. She did something that surprised them both. She laughed. You chose me because I had nothing. Because losing me would cost you nothing. And now you're telling me I matter so much that loving me might kill me. This isn't a joke. No, it's not. She took his hands, pressing them against her heart. I spent my entire life being nothing to everyone, and now you're telling me I matter enough to be worth dying for. That's not nothing. That's everything. He made a broken sound and pulled her into his arms. The cold was devastating. Her vision blurred, but beneath the ice, she felt his heart pounding. I won't let it take you, he whispered. I'll find a way. We'll find a way together. And somewhere beyond the window, watching from the shadows where a bribed servant had told her exactly where to stand, Mira smiled. She had finally found what she needed. The queen's weakness was the king himself. 2 months into their marriage, something awakened inside Adaryn. It started as a fever, a burning in her chest that spread outward, consuming everything. She woke gasping, her skin so hot that the sheets had begun to smolder. Adaryn! Theron reached for her face. The moment he touched her, steam rose from his palms. He jerked back with a hiss. What's happening to me? Her vision was blurring. Colors swam at the edges, orange, gold, red, like fire, like the sun itself was burning inside her skull. She screamed. Fire erupted from her hands, her eyes, and her mouth. Flames that burned white and gold, illuminating the room with blinding light. Then, silence. Adaryn collapsed against the pillows. The fever was gone, but something else had taken its place. Warmth. Pure, radiant warmth pulsing from her core. She looked down at her hands. They were glowing. A soft golden light emanating from her skin. And on her wrist, the hollow brand was transforming. The empty circle filling with a blazing sun symbol that seemed to burn with inner fire. That's impossible, Theron breathed. The door burst open. Seraphine rushed in, followed by healers. And behind them, face twisted with triumph, stood Mira. She had slipped in during the chaos, following the healers through doors that guards had abandoned in their panic. I told you there was something wrong with her. Mira pointed at Adaryn. She's not a hollow. She's something far worse. Mira, what are you talking about? Your mother. Your real mother. The one everyone thinks died giving birth to you. Mira's voice dripped venom. She didn't die. She was executed. Burned at the stake for what she was. The room went silent. A Solari, Mira continued. A sun-blooded witch. The most dangerous beings in existence. Capable of burning entire kingdoms to ash. Your mother killed 300 people when her power manifested. That's why my mother had you bound. That's why you were branded as hollow. Because if anyone discovered what you really were, they would have killed you too. Adaryn's mind reeled. Everything she'd believed, the emptiness, the shame, had been a lie. The binding is failing, a healer said. The seal is dissolving. Without it, her power will consume her. How long? Days. Perhaps a week. Silence fell. Adaryn looked at Theron. His curse was killing him with cold. Her power was killing her with fire. Leave us, Theron commanded. When they were alone, he took her hands. Steam rose where their skin met. I should have known, Adaryn whispered. Known what? You didn't know. I'm going to die, we both are. Tears streamed down her cheeks, evaporating on her heated skin. I love you. I know it feeds your curse, but I can't help it. His eyes closed. Pain rippled across his features. "I love you too," he said. "I've loved you since you refused to let go of my hand, since you held me while I was shaking. If loving you damns me, I'll burn gladly." Something cracked inside her, like a door opening, like chains falling away. "Theron, your curse is ice, cold, darkness, and I'm fire, warmth, light." Realization dawned in his amber eyes. "What if we're not both dying?" Adaryn said. "What if we're both being reborn?" The idea was insane, impossible, but it was all they had. "The curse feeds on isolation," Adaryn said. "My Solari power has been sealed, isolated inside me for 20 years. What if breaking my seal is what's destabilizing your curse? Because they're meant to balance each other?" They found Ravenna in the dungeons. After Mira's revelation, she'd been arrested for hiding a Solari. She looked smaller now, broken. "Why did you bind my power?" Adaryn demanded. Ravenna laughed bitterly. "You think I had a choice? Your mother wasn't just a Solari. She was the last pure-blooded one in existence. When they killed her, they should have killed you too." "Who wanted me dead?" "The Shadow Priests. The ones who created the curse on the Valdrin bloodline centuries ago. They've been hunting Solari for generations because they know what happens if a Solari ever bonds with a cursed king." Theron stepped forward. "What happens?" "The curse breaks." Ravenna met his gaze. "Solari are the natural enemy of shadow magic. Fire against ice, light against darkness. If a Solari truly bonds with a cursed king, their combined power destroys the curse entirely. Not just for that king, for every king after him. The bloodline would be cleansed forever." "That's why you hid me," Adaryn breathed. "You were protecting the curse." "I was protecting myself. The Shadow Priests made it clear. If you ever found your way to the king, they would kill everyone you'd ever known." Tears streamed down Ravenna's face. "I didn't have a choice." "And Mira? Does she serve them too?" Ravenna's expression flickered with shame. "Mira believes she'll be rewarded for exposing you. She doesn't understand that they'll kill her too once she's no longer useful." "The Shadow Priests," Theron said. "Where are they?" "Scattered. Operating from shadows. But they're watching. If you try to break the curse, they'll come for everyone." "Let them come," Adaryn said quietly. She took Theron's frozen hands in her burning palms. "I spent my entire life being afraid, hiding. I'm done. If breaking this curse means facing Shadow Priests, I'll face them. It could kill you. Loving you could kill me. I chose to love you anyway." Something fierce and absolute replaced the fear in his expression. "Then we do it together." Seraphine found the answer buried deep in the palace archives, texts hidden away by kings who feared what the knowledge might unleash. The bonding ritual was ancient, forbidden. It required blood, fire, ice, and a willingness to die for each other. They performed it at midnight in the palace gardens. Adaryn stood at the center of a circle of runes, flames dancing around her feet, her Solari power finally unleashed. Across from her, Theron stood wreathed in shadows, ice crystallizing in the air around him, the curse's darkness fully manifested for the first time. They were terrifying, beautiful, opposites in every way. And yet, as they stepped toward each other, the flames and shadows began to intertwine. "I bond myself to you," Adaryn spoke the ancient words. "My fire to your ice, my light to your darkness, my life to yours." "I bond myself to you," Theron echoed. "My ice to your fire, my darkness to your light, my life to yours." Their hands met. Light exploded outward. The ground shook. The sky cracked, stars wheeling as ancient magic tore through reality. Pain, unimaginable pain, like being burned and frozen simultaneously. And then, silence. Adaryn opened her eyes. She was lying on the ground, Theron beside her. The garden was transformed. Where ice had spread, flowers bloomed. Where fire had burned, new grass sprouted. Theron? He stirred, opened his eyes. They were pure gold. No darkness flickering at the edges. No shadow crawling beneath his skin. It's gone, he breathed. The curse. It's gone. Aderin looked at her hands. The burning had faded to gentle warmth. Her power was still there, vast and ancient. But it was no longer destroying her. And on her wrist, the sun symbol glowed softly, no longer a brand of shame, but a mark of what she truly was. We did it, she said. Theron pulled her into his arms, and for the first time, his touch wasn't cold. It was warm, human, alive. We're free. 6 months later, Valdrin had transformed. Aderin stood on the palace balcony, watching the celebration below. The anniversary of the curse's breaking had become a national holiday. Arms wrapped around her from behind, warm and strong. The council is asking about an heir, Theron murmured. Aderin smiled, her hand drifting to her stomach, where new life had just begun to grow. Let them wonder. Cruel woman. I learned from the best. He laughed, a real laugh, and spun her to face him. The king, who had been dying of cold, looked at her with open adoration. I have something for you? He pressed a small box into her hands. Inside lay a pendant, sun and moon intertwined, crafted from gold and silver. For the woman who taught me that fire and ice can coexist, he said softly. That darkness isn't destiny. That even monsters can learn to love. She kissed him there on the balcony, with the whole kingdom celebrating below. Mira had been exiled. The shadow priests abandoned her the moment the curse shattered, her usefulness spent. Ravenna remained imprisoned, and the shadow priests themselves had scattered to the wind, their centuries-old work undone in a single night. Below, she saw Seraphine raising a glass to them from the crowd. I love you, Theron said. I love you too, always. The fireworks reached their crescendo, explosions of color lighting up the night. Fire and ice, light and shadow. Two broken people who had found each other in darkness and built something beautiful. Neither of them had expected love. Both of them had found it anyway. And in the end, that had made all the difference. Thank you for listening to this story. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments what you thought. Your support means everything, and I read every single comment. Until next time, may you find your own light in the darkness.